party people. Welcome back, everybody. This is the day. Let me tell you, I'm so excited to be here today, of all days. So, yesterday, I announced that I was selling my beloved Prius. And, that probably came to everyone as a, yeah, duh. I mean, it's just sitting in your garage. It's almost 16 years old. No one is surprised by this. Why are you? What's the deal? And I think, the emotion around the Prius for me is just bigger than, oh, you have an old car that you used to drive that you don't drive anymore. The Prius really signified the first kind of stake in the ground of what the entirety of this movement would look like, because should the Prius have not have happened, we would have still been bogged down by different car payments, by different payments, and the Prius really was that first step forward out of the previous life that we had lived, out of staying a slave to other people and to payments. And so the Prius really signifies the first step in this whole movement. And so I was holding on to her for dear life. I mean, she wasn't working. She had more hybrid batteries put into her than I like to think about. And it just got to the point where it was just like, Hannah, you're just holding on to this for yourself. It's not doing anyone any good here. In fact, it's a bigger headache. In fact, the Prius served so well in the time that she was running. I mean, more amazing than anyone would have ever expected. And now that she's not, I know that I'm just holding on to something that isn't meant to be. And I can tell that because it continues to be a headache. In fact, this morning when I went to move the Prius out of the position that it's in, into the position where it needs to be towed, it was dead. Yay. And now I have to figure out how. Now, this is only difficult because the trunk doesn't have any way of opening when the vehicle is dead. And the reason that matters is because in a Prius, the battery is actually in the trunk. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adventure, as it always has been with this vehicle. And, I think I was holding on to her because it was just that remembrance of how far we've come and how significant that one purchase was, how life-changing it was, and I just didn't want to let her go. And I started to realize that, I'm just holding on to something for no real purpose, right? Other than the purpose of myself, and that's not really a good reason. And so yesterday I decided to let her go. And today she'll be loaded up and hauled off, and I'm so thankful for all of the things that she did, because so many people had told me, no, don't do that. Don't just buy an older car. That's a terrible idea. And I just knew that this was going to be the one step in kind of freeing ourselves from this rat race, right? From this inability to get ahead. And it had to happen. And I think had the Prius not been as serving and significant as she was, right? And that didn't mean that we didn't have problems, but she never left me stranded anywhere. She never really, she always kind of held her own. And if she had failed early on, I don't think we would have still been on this same path. right? Because everybody was in our ear saying that this wasn't going to work, saying that this wasn't a safe choice, saying that we needed to make a better decision for our family, and how dare us put ourselves at risk, how dare us put our kids at risk. And so if you had added on in that moment, kind of failure, I don't know that we would have stayed the path, right? Because we had so many people chirping in our ears that this was a terrible decision, and having an action like a car breaking down in that moment of those people talking would have signified that what they were saying was right. And I don't know that we would have shifted this belief that this way of living and thinking is possible. And that still scares me to this day. Had we not made it through that moment with that vehicle, I don't know that we'd be where we are right now. And so I didn't want to let go of the Prius for that reason, because it was such a huge significance. And yet, we have to let some things go. We have to be okay to just let go of that moment and thank it. I'm so grateful that we had that vehicle. It was such a crazy change in our lives to make, and it showed us how possible it was, and it showed us that we can do this. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you, good Prius. I'm thankful for all of the things that you have done for us. Hi, Kelly. Okay, sorry. Kelly's on live right now. Good morning. Okay, so that really is where we're grounding ourselves in our greatness. I feel like I'm grateful for the Prius, but I'm also grateful for my growth in accepting that the Prius has served its purpose and it's okay to let it go. So go ahead and take time today to recognize yourself for your own greatness, because in case you didn't know, which you now will, you're amazing. And it's really important that you start practicing recognizing yourself for it, that you start readily accepting how amazing you are and adopting that language into your life. It will be transforming. You have no idea. So that's my great thing. Okay. And yes, Kelly, I do remember when we put 500 bags of popcorn in the Prius. I'm pretty sure yesterday when I was cleaning it out, I was still pulling little things of popcorn out of the back seat. The Prius has served so many people in so many different ways, and there are so many memories in it, and it was so hard to let go, but it had to happen. Okay. The popcorn in the Prius. That is a memory. So today is different from other days. I don't know if you're aware of this, but today actually marks the 2-year journey of what this has been. So on the day of my 30th birthday, I sat in Minnesota in a cabin, trying to relax, trying to reflect, and more than anything, trying to find new dreams for my life. And today I turn 32, which means we are 2 years from the day where I said, I don't have any dreams left and I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And that day I was searching, I was reading, I was researching, I was trying to figure out who I was even supposed to become in this life, what I was even supposed to do, because everybody around me was saying like, oh my gosh, what an amazing life. How amazing, how grateful you must be, how happy you must be. And I didn't feel happy like everybody was telling me I should. So then, like any good human being who is an adult appearing in this world, I started to look to fill that void. So instead of creating new goals and dreams, I was like, well, I already did everything I was here to do. Maybe this is how this works. Because, I'm a human adult trying to navigate this world with everyone that lives in it right now. And we do that by just continuing to do generally what we've learned from other people, what we've been taught. And so, like the people around me, like the people I've learned from, I just decided, well, I guess that's what happens, and someone else is going to come in and tell me what I'm supposed to do next. So until that point, I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, just buy, oh goodness, just buy different things, right? That's what we're supposed to do here, right? We're just supposed to shop more, find new things that are going to provide a new purpose, and I'll just go to Target more because that'll help, right? And then that turned into those small purchases didn't really fill that void anymore. So then it became bigger purchases. And so then it was like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to move up in my career. Maybe I'm supposed to want to buy a new vehicle or build a new house. Or maybe I fill that void with better meals, or maybe I fill that void with a vacation home, or maybe it's a boat, or maybe it's, I don't know what to fill it with anymore. I'm feeling exhausted by trying to figure out how to navigate this life because I have nothing left to work on. And so 2 years ago today, I sat reading books, writing, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and that really set us forth on this journey we're on today. And the death of a dream really comes from this place that I was in 2 years ago, realizing I had nothing left to work on and I didn't know what to do. And everybody around me was telling me that I should feel grateful and happy and excited, and I just didn't feel those things with what I was doing. And it was at no fault of anyone around me except for myself. And I think the bigger reality that I've learned along this journey over the last 2 years is that I hadn't really decided anything. That most of the things that were happening to me were just happening because someone else had made that decision, not because I had put my stake in the ground. And so 2 years ago, really, I was sitting down to try to figure out how to even dream, what dreams were, what was acceptable for me, how to go about that. And that growth, that discovery, that unwillingness to give up on figuring out who I'm meant to be in this world really has put us firmly in this place we're in now. And I'm still learning every single day more about myself, more about different listeners that come on and find this podcast, more about just this journey of life. And so I'm going to take you all the way back to what this looks like. And this is what I like to do on everyone's birthday that's in my life. I like the podcast on that day to really be devoted to that person. So like everyone else, I'm going to do that for myself. So I came into this world as the third born daughter to my parents. Now, the only story that I know about my birth was that it included Mr. Rogers and an episode that was playing for my two older sisters. And my mom was sitting and my dad was working. And if I recall the story right, he was in a crawl space, stuck up in an attic, humid, I'm sure, because it's, the middle of August. And my mom remembers the mailman in Mr. Rogers. I can't remember his name. And he came on and he said, "Speedy delivery." And right after that, my mom got her contraction and knew that they had to get to the hospital. And so she called my dad, and my dad didn't want to come home because he was like, "No, I'm working and I'm in this crawl space." And she's like, "I'm telling you, it's going to be a speedy delivery." And shortly after, I was born. And I know from the memories that I have of my childhood, I know that my childhood was filled, and the more that I see my children navigate this world, I think the more my eyes open to who I must have been as a child in this world. And I know that my mind was always racing with different thoughts and different ideas and different views of the world and the way that it worked and how it all worked. And I would always be performing and doing so many shows of Timon and Pumbaa with my brother after The Lion King came out. That was our production. We would act that out. We would sing Hakuna Matata. We were the essence of what a good childhood should be. And I would ride my yellow banana seat bike all around town because I grew up in a town of, 300 maybe, 400. And I'm pretty sure everyone knew who I was because I didn't have any limitations of who I would become. I actually was very firm on how I presented myself and what I wanted that look to be. And it didn't look like everyone else. And the only thing I was sure of was that was intentional. I didn't want to look like everybody else. Looking like everybody else bored the crap out of me. And so I would look the exact opposite. In fact, it was very important to me that I look very different. And as I begin to navigate this world, I start to realize that those differences aren't something that's welcomed in this world. And that it became really scary to look different in the world because then you stood out. And a lot of people were scared of standing out, and I wasn't. I never was. In fact, I wanted to stand out. I wanted to act. I wanted to be this big person all of the time. And I probably right around middle school, I start to realize that that's not normal. And, when you're in middle school, the important thing is to look normal and to fit in. And so I start to fit in, and then I'm like, no, stand out. And I go on this extreme Avril Lavigne phase where I am the epitome of the skater girl. Okay. If Skater Boy in the song had a girlfriend, it was me, and I had arm sleeves. And I remember that birthday specifically because I got a skateboard and I had all the Skater Boy shirts from Kohl's that you could buy in the boys section. And I had loose pants, and I was just hell-bent on looking different from where everybody wanted me to fit. And that phase was shorter lived than it probably should have been, but that served me well and took me into 9th grade, where boys exist and where it all of a sudden isn't that cool to be the tallest person in your school. And I'm not ridiculously tall, but apparently everybody was ridiculously short because I came into 9th grade as one of the tallest people in my school. Now, I didn't end my high school career that way, but I was the tallest. And so I stood out regardless. And so all of a sudden, standing out just for that one thing was scary. But then it was like, oh, and you're gonna look way different and be this skater girl? Hannah, can we just stop? This is scary. We don't want to stand out this much in high school. That's not a good thing. That's not smart. That's not good for us. Let's not do that. And so I would start trying to fit in. And true to the way I had been made fun of my whole life by my siblings. God bless siblings. Wow, they're amazing. And they're really meant to be there to build us up and to make us stronger. And here they are. I grew up in a family of beautiful, perfect, blonde hair, blue-eyed perfection. And right in the middle of all that perfection was this little blemish. That was Hanna. Hanna was crazy. She didn't really fit the bill. She was tall and stringy may not even do that justice. She was this red-haired, gap-toothed, green-eyed blemish. And all of a sudden in high school, it became apparent that standing out was not something that I wanted to do. And so I would start dyeing my hair blonde at that point. I actually even would put in blue contacts, because at that point, that would have been like 2000s, somewhere in the later 2000s, when color contacts were really cool. And the problem was they were super cool, but they were a whole color over your eyeball. And so everything was tinted blue. I don't know who came up with that, but it was an attempt. And so, boom, my eyes were blue, and I looked like my siblings, and I looked like the majority of the high schoolers that I was surrounded with. And all of a sudden, I started to fit in, instead of what I had worked on my whole life, which was stand out. And that became a huge struggle for me. And it wasn't a struggle while I was going through it, though I could feel myself feeling threatened. And as I felt more threatened, showing up as this different person than what I was called to be, as I felt that strain, I would become more snarky and sarcastic. And all of a sudden, this person who had this strength to love and include and love people's differences, all of a sudden I would bring other people's differences down in the form of humor, right? And that became one of my beautiful traits, was that I was funny and quick-witted, except for those quick wits and that hilarity really came with a double-edged sword, where I would use those quick-witted words to tear people down so they could just maybe be lower than I had felt at that point. And that would serve me really well all up until I was about 30, when I realized I haven't been showing up as me for a very long time. Probably since 8th grade, when I had made that last-ditch attempt to stand out in this world. When I had made my last claim for who I was called to be. And once I put her away, it was like this never-ending struggle of trying to hide that person from the world, but also wanting to be her more than anything. And I had gotten so used to hiding her, I didn't really even know how to show up as her anymore. And so when I turned 30, and when I started asking questions, and when I started wondering how I was supposed to show up in this life, I had to go all the way back and realize where I got lost, where she went, that person. The one that naturally shows up in this world, not the one that I have to coach myself into every day. And that's literally what adulthood felt like. It felt like this ever-present need to coach myself through my life, to continue to keep this prompt going where I'm like, hey, no, don't be that. No, be this person. Okay, this is how you be this person. Okay, this feels good. This feels calm. Keep going. Okay. Right? And that would be the constant conversation that was going on in my head. And not that there's any issue with having to kind of coach yourself through situations. The issue was that I was doing that all the time. I didn't even know how to show up in this world without coaching myself into it. And I always had this natural call to just be happy and joyful and myself, but I had lost who I was somewhere along the way. And I know that it was that like last ditch effort to be an eighth grader, an independent, different person in this world. And what I realized in ninth grade is that being different doesn't equate success. And the reason that lesson happened really was because I realized that my family, my background, we don't know success. We don't come from success. We're like bottom, lower tier of the middle class world. And so I couldn't really lean on and trust that there was good in me and how I wanted to show up. And so this creative, acting, performing self needed to be put away because I wouldn't be able to find success as that person. So cap her away and figure out, Hanna, now your job is to figure out how to navigate this life and be successful, because you don't want to go down that pain path that other people have trying to live out this crazy dream. There's no way that dream can happen for you. Put it away. And so of the many deaths of my dream along this way, that was one of the most significant. The day that I turned on myself and said, no, you don't get to decide who you are and how you show up in this world and what your mark will be. Other people will decide that for you. You don't have enough to decide. And so that day 2 years ago when I showed up, it was showing up to figure out who I was even meant to be. And I don't know, playing that out in real time, talking through it, because a majority of this journey, now I didn't start the podcast on my 30th birthday, but I did start this journey. And the podcast started about a year later, a little over. And that's been walking on this journey day by day with me in how you rediscover yourself, in how I rediscovered myself realistically, because I'm just telling my portion of my story. And my only hope in continuing to tell that story is that someone finds themselves in this story. I'm not saying things that haven't already been said. I'm not discovering new truths. I'm discovering my truth. And my goal in continuing to tell this story is that one person finds it and they find hope and they find themselves and they find their own path. And I'm not guaranteeing that my path is going to be the one that they follow, because it's been crazy. But what I do hope is that more than anything, you show up and you figure out who you're meant to be in this world. And that is the hardest work that exists, right? Because so many times you have to break through these seemingly unbreakable layers of who you're told to be in this world. And what I can say over these past 2 years of discovery and learning and growing is that you're so insanely capable of breaking through the things, the lies that you've been told here. You are bigger than that. I guarantee it. I just guarantee that you've been told the same lies that I have. If not worse, hopefully better. But I know that there's so much beautiful capability, beautiful possibility in every single person that walks on this earth. And so my reason to keep telling this story, to keep living through this, is so that maybe you show up for yourself. Maybe you take an Enneagram test, or don't take a test. Just read the fears. I talked Erica through this the other day. Read the fears, okay? Whichever one about makes you cry, that's probably it. But maybe you find your Enneagram, and maybe you find and discover new things about yourself that help you navigate this world. Or maybe you just show up and write your dreams down for the first time in your life. Or maybe you just start looking into who you're meant to be. And if this has inspired any form of that, then there's reason to keep going. And 2 years into the journey, I can't believe we are all the places we are. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.